Hello everyone, welcome back to Zero Space Security. So as we continue in part 6, the boss says I, the leader says we. So today's topic is not really about speaking more, it's about how we make people feel when you speak. There is a big difference between a boss and a leader. A boss wants control, a leader builds connection. And sometimes that difference is just one word, I versus we. A lot of people think communication is only about confidence or speaking loudly. But real communication is about listening, understanding, and making people feel included. That's where leadership actually starts. So, in this part, we are going to talk about 4D listening, understanding people beyond words, and how strong communicators create trust instead of pressure. Because the best communicators don't just talk well, they make feel people well heard. And let's get started for the same. Attention, please. Great writers are great leaders and readers as well. Great filmmakers are a great watchers. Great speakers are. I want you to fill in the blank. Not only fill in the blank, but say it out loudly. Great speakers are a great listeners. This point is not stressed enough. Listening skills are much more important than speaking skills. Mainly because listening influences speaking, but speaking does not always influence listening. There is a big difference between boss and a leader. A boss is me focused. A boss is a job title. A leader is a character trait. It's something that extends beyond a simple job title. A boss may not be a leader and leader may not be a boss. We want to look beyond the mainstream entertainment of what makes a great communicator. Wait, you know what? Let's use mainstream entertainment. You ever seen one of the those shows where the boss is mean and constantly giving the main character a hard time? I used to think that only happened in TV shows until it happened to me. Tim was his name. He had just transferred into my company and was a pit bull. I would yell at his employees, had a low thresholds for not meeting deadlines and created a very toxic environment. This was annoying because my manager was Patrick. Why the confusion? Well, I technically reported to Patrick. However, he was located in Chicago while I was located in Tampa. After some time, my company passed a rule where remote employees needed an on floor manager as well. That's where team came in. Working with those two is it was incredible unique because I directly saw how the two were different. Tim was a boss. He did not care how you felt, did not care about whether or not you are feeling fulfilled in your job or much for that matter. For him, it was all about making sure the deadlines were met for his boss. Eddie made Tim look like Mr. Nice Guy. On the other hand, Patrick was more understanding. He was mainly about letting the employees manage themselves. He would discipline them if there was needed for him to get involved. Was a Patrick leader? I would say no. I, he was much more of a leader than team enough. The reason I did not consider Patrick a leader was because he was a tad bit too passive. Eventually, employees got comfortable being lazy around him. That's something we don't want. Otherwise, the second A in a communication, which is assertive, starts to vanish. In this section, we are going to learn that listening is not a passive act of just nodding your head. It's about something much deeper, a lost art that is needed for revival. Hearing versus listening. Hearing is a physical, listening is a physical and mental. To understand difference, it's smart to go down memory lane. Have you ever had that moment when someone was talking away? You were in La La Land? I'm sure you have a few moments like those. In this moment, you were hearing all the words, the sounds part, but the comprehension was not there. After some time, the person is done speaking and is like, well, what do you think? Oh no. They're expecting you to contribute to their points. Unfortunately, you have no clue what to say. For this scenario, the senses were engaged, but the mind was elsewhere. Senses are hearing facilities of the ears that pick up the audio. However, until mind is connected to those senses, perception is not complete. Any dummy can hear, you just need to show up. On other hand, listening is an art. I like calling important topic art because it makes me take the topic more seriously. You should try it out for yourself. View listening as an art form. Not only should you view listening as a systemized craft, but you should also view it as a muscle. Have you ever seen someone who was obsessed with their phone scrolling away, whether the poor chap was aware or not? They are doing something extremely dangerous to find their mind. The act of scrolling is strengthening the distraction muscle. Through scrolling, the mind is being presented completely disparate content pieces, which is leading the mind to think incongruent thoughts. Even though we cannot see the distraction muscle, it is there. Fortunately, the listening muscles is there as well. It comes down to asking yourself the difficult question: am I really listening to others or just hearing them? Many have no clue that there is a difference. Not knowing there is a difference leads to mistakes such as planning the next thing to say while the person is talking. We only implement what we pride in. With that being said, let's take pride in how well we make someone else feel heard. You can do a lot of things wrong, but if you can listen, most of your errors will be wiped out clean. I knew a kid like this. His name was Dupe. Dupe was Mr. Hot and Cold. He was the kind of guy who was a warm personality one moment, and in the next month or next moment, he would yell at you. He would mainly yell whenever sports were involved. That was his hot topic. With sports, you just wanted to let him have the last word. Despite Goop's hot and cold personality, I recall him being able to listen very well. With sports, Dupe would intentionally listen to those who would bluntly disagree with him. How he reacted afterwards was not great, but still, plenty of people viewed him as a lovable teddy bear because he at least listened to them before he exploded. This may not seem like the best illustration, especially because his hot headed personality is something that displays social unintelligence. Look beyond that for a second. Other peoples are forgiving his rage because he made them feel heard. That's the power of listening. Understand the practical benefits of this art. It's one thing to say, oh, yeah, listening is good. It's another thing to say, here are some practical benefits I have noticed regarding listening. I learn I learn lessons faster from others. My concentration is improving. I have more empathy. My thick skin is being built. The anxiety I used to feel about saying the right thing is melting away. Oh, I'm just getting started. Get detail and you will appreciate this art form beyond the ears. If I were to tell you to close your eyes and picture the image that's come when I say listening, what will you see? Immediately a person will say yes. This is common answer but dangerous answer. When you listen only with the ears, you are 3D listener, not 4D one. A 4D listener engage as many of their senses as they possible can. There are five senses that all human beings have: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling. You may not have to engage all these senses during a conversation, but when you look closer, you will hopefully notice that going beyond the ears is a smart. I used to have this teacher named Mr. Goroso in high school. She was fresh off divorce and seems to be very moody with our classes. Although she was our math teacher, at times she seems very psychological teacher, telling us about her feeling and even trying to psychoanalyze the students. I came to find out that Miss Grossi husband left her for another woman from school gossip. Even the other teachers were speaking about her situation. As for time went on by, Mr. Gosso seems to be getting back in her groove. However, certain things with her were changing. Two changes being were her style and her scent. Have you ever had that moment in school when you walked into a certain classroom and you knew a certain teacher was there? Think about that. Mr. Grosso and her classroom always had a unique scent. However, after her divorce, the scent of her and the class were changing. Her hair was quite different as well. She was an attractive woman, pretty face, curvy body, and long hair all the way through her waist. Now, her hairs are barely touching her shoulders. Routinely, she would tell the students that she was okay, that she had moved on from her near decade old relationship. All the correct words were being used to show her comfort. All the students nodded their head and though nothing more. 2 year passes by. As we few years passes by, I'm now volunteering at a hospital for some credit hours from my IB program. As I'm about to go to the office, guess who I run into? Mr. Gosu. She looks like her old self with long hair and his back to smelling like her old self. Her dad was getting uh, dialysis and she was accompanying him for his appointment. I was free because I got my work done for the day. For the next 1.5 hours, I would talked. I never bounded with teacher like that in my life. He talked about future goals, our past learning, more others, etc. That's when her came up. She spilled the beans on why she started to look different after the breakup. It's because she wanted a new identity. She wanted to start a new chapter. Her cutting off her hair was not just a fashion statement, it was to show that she was no longer her husband's wife. Her using a different scent was not just about her desire to wear the latest perfume, it was to remind herself that now she controls her narrative. How did I miss all the information years earlier? I know why. It's because I listened only with the ears and did not engage my other senses. I should have used my senses of vision to see Mr. Gorosu's body language. Her body did not match her words. Looking back at it, this seems obvious. The 4D listeners does not only listen to words, their goal is to uncover the other person's identity underneath the words. When we just listen to the words, that's all we hear words. Sure, there is some comprehension, but we are just scratching the surface. It's like the tip of iceberg. We only see one of the ninth of an iceberg. The rest is submerged underwater. Word listeners only get one out of ninth of the information. Identity listeners set the target of nine out of ninth of the information. When encountering someone like Mr. Gosos, the goal is to be holistic in terms of how you process data. This is when you factor in past interaction with the present interaction. When getting as many sense as possible of yours involved, that's when you enter a new portal. Plenty people says one thing that do another thing. This doesn't always make sense. However, if you are 4D listener, then it makes all the sense in the world. The engine of 4D listening. In the last section, I was talking about how it's smart to engage as many of your senses as possible when listening. Go beyond hearing alone. The more senses we can engage, the more we can factor in the other person's identity rather than just the words they are using. This may seem like a taller word. You may be thinking, by golly, where do I even begin? Listen, let me make it simple. You begin with curiosity, to be patient, assume someone is dumber than they are, to be curious, assume someone is smarter than they are, assume the person you are speaking to is one of the smartest people out there. They are interesting. Even if it does not seem like it at first glance, give them the benefits of doubt. How much you believe they are interesting will determine how curious you are. How curious you are will determine how many senses you engage. It's like the first time you were in love. I was easy to spot when your partner and something wrong in their life. The honeymoon stage is the beginning of the relationship when two are getting the feel for each other. This is when you guys are in paradise. This phase is when you are curious about one another. If one person is having a bad day, then you can immediately tell. Let's say this relationship progresses to a point where the honeymoon phase ends and the realness now begins. Games are changing. At this point, what was once considered adorable by your partner is annoying. Curiosity slowly starts to plummet. As a curiosity plummet, the ability to process high level of information plummet as well. This is when one party is having a bad day and the other person cannot tell. It's because they don't care enough. Care, curiosity, the two words go together. The engine for 4D listening is to assume that this person has information that will change your life. When you do that, you will be in the tune with the entire conversation. Listening and confidence. Sponge versus temporaline. Tempoline. Proper listening builds a strong foundation to rest your communication skills upon. This is when you don't have to try so much. Now it's a game of flowing and enjoying the environment. Confidence is a lot like fishing. It's better to have the real kind rather than putting on an act. When I was a kid, I would fish in this pond in my backyard. I would go fishing with my grandpa, dad, uncle, and brothers. Five of us total. Each of us had a different fishing poles. My grandpa was the most old school. He had stick with a nylon string attached to it. The rest of us had different colored fishing poles that were modern. Despite us all using different tools, we all got our bait from the same bucket. We either use worms or breed. One day I invite my cousins to come fishing with us. He too had a fishing pool like me. However, his bait was different. My cousin had this fancy bait box with all type of hooks, imitation fish and other tools. I asked him why he had so many baits for. He said that just what came with the bait box. I asked my squad how come we did not have a bait box like that. Why we why we were only using bread and worms. That's when my uncle spoke up and said, "Let's see who catches the most fish." In this session, my cousin barely caught a thing. Maybe it was because it just was not his day. My uncle implied it was something else. You see, Armani, big fish can spot real from fake, even though our bread and worms don't look nice. It's real. All that fancy stuff in the bait box is fake. Big fish became big because they were not fooled by the fake. That was an important moment for me and taught me tons about listening skill. It's amazing to see how many people spend time pretending to listen when they can actually practice real listening. It's because pretend listening is fancy and very flashy. A lot of you don't say wow. However, there is little substance. Real listening is not that much flash, but a lot of substance. Real listening is the temple of confidence. Confidence is not about getting other people to like you. Confidence is not caring if others like you. It's because you like yourself. This is the mindset of someone who knows how to listen. The act of listening is the act of putting someone ahead of us. Fear happens when we try to put ourselves in front of others. You need to become dependent. to be independent, let go some power to gain power back. The process of being articulate, assertive, and audacious is not done with force. Force may work well in the gym, however, it makes for an uncomfortable experience for the communicator. With communication skills, flow beats force. There are two types of listening out there: sponge listening, trampolines, trampoline listening, sponge listening. A sponge absorbs. When communicator listens with this style, they are observing the information, probably not saying too much, with gentle eye, squint and steady head notes to imply that listening is taking place. Sponge listening is known as a passive listening. Tampoline listening. A tampoline amplifies the communicator takes the point from other party and amplifies it by asking questions, paraphrasing, contributing points, joking around, etc. Trampoline listening is known as active listening. It takes context to know when to apply which listening hat. From my experience, be a sponge. When being a shoulder to cry on a trampoline for most of the scenario, if someone says their dog died, I doubt they want to be asked to expand, probed, and ask nonce questions. This is the perfect time to be sponge and absorb the details. On the other hand, if someone says they got a dog, this is the perfect time to ask them to expand, contribute your own points, and ask nonsense questions. Perfect time to be trampoline. Context matters. Now you know there are two different types of listening modes. This added knowledge will make it easier to spot the context. A lot of times, if you are present in the interaction and not off in la la land, then method presents itself. Too much intellectual effort is not needed. It's because attention is primal. When you pay someone, they cannot help but remember you. Elephant memory. With communication skills, small can become gargantuan very quickly. Little details matter. The smaller the details that you remember, the better is for you the level of your connection that you can form. Listening is lot like gratitude. Last section, I compared listening to fishing, and now I am comparing it to gratitude. You beat your butt, I am. Think about it like this. Imagine a person who only feels grateful when they get a big win. Do you think this person will be better off in the long run? I believe some gratitude is better than no gratitude. However, this person is on a slippery slope. Waiting for measure W may leave these persons more anxious than ever. It's because they are not appreciating the small things. Let's say that this person adopt the opposite strategy. How about the person accounts their tiny wins, small wins that they never ever consider before? Actively trying to spot small wins causes these persons to be more present, use creativity, and look into things which were initially ignored. Having the laptop, working when deadlines are due, having energy in the morning, which leads to energy in the day, not getting sick for 8+ months. Wow. All the small stuff which were initially not picked up on, once the person appreciate the micro wins, embracing the big wins happens and autopilot. That's the magic of gratitude. Likewise, with listening skills, look out for the small details. Remember things that will cause other people to be like, you actually picked up on that. Who I don't think you heard me when I said that by setting the intention to be on the lookout for small details like that, remembering the details become autopilot. This also builds an elephant memory. Strong memory skills build upon listening skills and vice versa. The two creates a synergistic effect. Set the intention for tiny details and the big details are a byproduct. Finally, putting it all together in this section, listening skills were put on the throne. Why? It's because great listeners are the great speakers. As the old saying goes, we have two ears and one mouth. Not only is a not only as this is a glitch, but there is also plenty of practical truth to the statement. To avoid over talking points which are not relevant to the conversation, listen more. Some of the finest speakers you know are listening with intent. Hearing is physical and listening is physical mental. Any dummy can hear. Listening, on other hand, is a methodical act that requires fine tuning. To master this art, it's about going beyond the ears. 3D listeners simplify listen with their ears, looking out for words. 4D listeners listen with as many senses as possible to get a feel for the other person identities. Want Do you want to gratitude from 3D to 4D? Then be curious, be more curious. Want to be more curious? Assume the person you are speaking it to is one of the smartest, most interesting people out there. Curiosity automatically engages multiple senses. Strong listening leads to real confidence, not to imitation kind. There is a trampoline and sponge listening. Sponge is about being passive and observing. Trampoline is about observing and amplifying both have a role. Listening is not listening without going micro. Rather than setting the intention to look for big things, set the intention to look for things. In this way, putting the big things are a byproduct. Remember, you can do a lot things wrong, but if you listen properly, then you will undo a lot of your mistakes. So, so we can finish here. This was part six because you know anyone can give instruction as well as anyone can speak also, but not everyone can lead. That's a thin line difference, I would say. That's a takeaway from this book. And leadership starts when people feels comfortable around your communication, when they feel understood, and when they know you are listening. That's why we always be a stronger than I. If you improve your way to listen, the way you observe, and the way you understand people, your communication changes completely. That's it for part 6. So I will see you in the next one, which is going to be our part 7, the good, the bad, the ugly. So thank you so much for the being a part of this content so far, and I appreciate your patience for the same. And yeah, have a good one. Bye bye.